Today we're going to make green Thai curry with chicken. This is one of my favorite recipes, and while I don't know how authentic it actually is, it is so close that it's unbelievable, and it is extremely delicious. Let's take a look. Alright, so for this curry, the dry ingredients you're going to need first and foremost some green curry paste. I like this brand, My Ploy. I'm sure I mispronounced that, and I apologize in advance. One thing I will say about this is that it does contain shellfish, so if you are allergic to shellfish, there are other brands that you can go with. But if you're not allergic to shellfish, this is, in my opinion, the best brand you can get because it's got not only great spice to it, but great flavor. In addition to that, you're also going to need some brown sugar. And that's pretty much what you need as far as the regular dry ingredients go. But then for the vegetables that you're going to need some yellow squash and you're going to need some zucchini. Now, I typically will use basically one of each for a normal size batch, but today I'm making a big batch because I'm cooking for a lot of people, so I'm going to be using 2 of each of those. Then, in addition to that, I'm also going to be using both a red and a yellow bell pepper. You can use green, they work just fine. Some sliced carrots. You can get the frozen ones like I do. They work great. If you don't want to do that and you want to just keep them completely fresh carrots obviously work great. Also, you're going to need some peas. You don't need a ton of them. This bag is a lot more than we need, but we use them periodically. So I have all that. Then you're also going to need, and this is very important, some Thai basil. Now, if you can't get Thai basil, regular basil will do just fine. If you can't get the fresh stuff at all and you have the dry stuff, it will work. It's just not going to be quite as good. But the Thai basil it's got a stronger flavor to it, and it just goes really, really well with the curry. It's one of those things that if you don't have it, you're missing out. But it will still be good regardless. Just keep in mind, do not, I repeat, do not use the stems because they do not break down to the point where they're easily edible, and sometimes it's basically like you're eating sticks. So don't make that mistake like I have in the past. Make sure you take all the leaves off and separate them. And this is completely optional. It's just a separate thing in case you want some additional spice, and that is some Thai chilies. This is just really extra, completely extra, 100% optional. Most of the time I don't use them, but on the occasion that I make it to where it ends up being milder for my guests who can't handle the spice, those situations I'll have these on hand as available for that as well. And now we're going to go ahead and move on to the canned ingredients and jarred ingredients, that sort of thing that we're also going to need. Alright, additional canned ingredients that you're going to need. First of all, this one is another essential as far as I'm concerned, and that is bamboo shoots. You can get them cut however you like. I like them in strips like this, but you can really just go with anything that you happen to like. These are essential as far as I'm concerned. It's not the same without them, but definitely get those. You're also going to need coconut milk. That is really also very essential as part of the curry sauce. Additionally, this one is technically optional, but it is something that I prefer to use, and that is oyster sauce. Now, typically, I think this is made with fish sauce, and I will usually do a blend of both. So, also, Thai fish sauce. I like to do a blend of fish sauce and oyster sauce because the fish sauce on its own makes you very stinky. I'll just put it that way. But doing a blend of both, you get the flavor of the fish sauce without having to worry about the stinky part as much. And you can actually completely leave it out if you want. You can just do oyster sauce, or you can just do fish sauce if you want it to be closer to the real, authentic version of the recipe. And then another thing you're going to need, and this is really just for sauteing the curry paste in the very beginning, and also to a lesser degree for cooking the chicken, although that mostly gets done in the sauce. And that is just some coconut oil. It doesn't have to be coconut oil. You can use whatever you have available. Pretty much anything will work. I like using coconut oil because it goes well with the curry flavor, and really it's just, in my opinion, it's the best choice. And so then we get to the last major thing here, and that is choice of protein. Now when it comes to protein, you can use really any kind of meat that you like. Technically, you could probably get away with even using something like tofu, but realistically, unless you're vegetarian and not vegan, this is not a vegan-friendly recipe. I don't know if there are, I'm pretty sure there are vegan-friendly curry pastes, but when you have the some of the other ingredients, like especially if you're using oyster sauce and or fish sauce, I don't know what kind of substitutions you can use in those situations. So I would just pretty much say, assume this isn't vegan friendly. However, regardless of that, protein, I personally prefer using boneless, skinless chicken thighs. I find that those are the ones that cook the best and don't get dried out or really tough, as long as you don't cook them like forever. You can use beef, you can use pork, you can use shrimp, you can use fish. Any of those things will work just fine. But in my opinion, chicken thighs are the best choice that you have available. And this actually just goes with the protein. It's technically optional, and I know some people are not going to be willing to use this, and that's perfectly fine. It's up to you. But it is, in my opinion, essential to have the best possible flavor, and that is MSG. Now, I have heard people say that MSG is just a way that you can keep yourself from having to cook, having to season your food properly, and to some degree, that's not entirely inaccurate, but this really adds a nice umami element to the flavor of the food, and in my opinion, it's one of those things that leaving it out, it just really harms the recipe. However, I will say, if you can't use MSG, you're not comfortable with it, you're fearful of using it, that sort of thing, you can do salt. It's not going to be the same kind of flavor, but it will still work. You just, obviously, you'll do it to taste, and that's really what it comes down to. The MSG is more or less done to taste. You really just kind of have to fake it as best as you can when you're cooking initially, and then as you're cooking, you can taste and see if the flavor is good enough. If you need to add more, you can add more, and so on and so forth. Just don't overdo it, because while MSG is great and it's hard to overdo it, especially for a recipe of this size, it's also very possible to overdo it. If you just, like if I did all of the MSG in this bag, that would probably be too much. But we'll see how it goes. There is going to be a lot here to go, so we're going to go ahead and start getting stuff chopped up. Alright, so now we're going to get started with the cooking. Turned it up to high heat using a wok. You can use any other pan if you like, but For this big of a dish, you're definitely going to want to have something that's nice and deep. You could technically get away with using something like a pasta pot, you know, just with the bottom part of the pasta pot, but personally I always use a wok. I also have a cast iron wok, and because of the sheer amount that's going to be made here, I'm probably going to have to split it into 2 separate woks in order to get it all cooked properly. What we'll start off with is roughly about 2 tablespoons of coconut oil. Add to the pan, and this is obviously just approximate, it's not exact. Get that nice and hot and melted. And then here you're going to add about 100 grams of the green curry paste, and I find that this is about the right amount for the spice level that my family likes. And it's going to get pretty smoky. It's going to get even a little browned. Don't worry about that too much. Once you mix everything else in, it's not going to matter. But basically, you just want to get this cooked just a little bit. It'll probably make you cough a bit. Get it cooked just enough, like lightly browned, just a little bit, until it's basically starting to make you cough. And at that point, that's when you're going to add coconut milk. Coconut milk will help take care of a lot of that smokiness, and then it won't be quite so bothersome. I know it looks really creamy right now, but once it all gets incorporated, it won't be nearly as much. Now, I will say that if you are going to make a larger batch, you can use a couple cans of coconut milk, and that's what I'm going to do in this case, because I'm going to be splitting it up. But you should still get a good spice level with that. And basically, you really just want to get it all well incorporated, mixed up properly. And what's nice to do is get all the sauce ingredients put together first, and then once you've done that, it's easier that way you can get kind of a good idea of what it's going to taste like, figure out whether or not you need more spice added to it before you start adding the chicken and all the vegetables. So the next thing we're going to add is some brown sugar. Typically for a big batch, I'll do about 4 tablespoons of brown sugar. This is one where I'm a little more precise, but honestly it doesn't matter too much if you're using an actual tablespoon or not. We'll just go ahead and get that stirred in. That brown sugar is really important because it adds a little bit of sweetness to help offset some of the spice and the creaminess. It's just a really essential thing, and as far as I know, it is actually an authentic thing that typically they will add in Thai curry. But even if it's not, it's still delicious, and that's really what matters most. And then here we're going to also add some oyster sauce. Now I have a couple of partial bottles with a little bit left in each of them, so I'm going to add roughly about 4 tablespoons, give or take. It's probably actually more like about 3 between these 2 partial bottles I have. And I'm also going to add about 1 tablespoon, and this is just approximate, of fish sauce. Now we'll get that all stirred up. And keep in mind that at this point, you're not going to get the full flavor that you'll get later on, because between adding the basil, which you'll be adding with the other vegetables, as well as adding the chicken and the MSG associated with that, will definitely make a difference in the flavor. But this will at least give you a good idea of where the spice level's at, and then help you to decide whether or not you want to make any changes, any modifications to it. See right here, as far as I'm concerned, that's the perfect spice level. It's just right. That 100 grams seems to really be the sweet spot. So it's at this point that we're going to add the chicken. Now, because I'm making a large batch, I'm using about 4 pounds of chicken thighs already seasoned with the MSG. And what I'll end up doing here is, after I've cooked the chicken well enough, then I'll add in the veggies, and I'll probably actually split it up before I do that, and that way we just make sure that everything gets really evenly cooked. But the chicken is the first thing you want to cook before you add anything else, because doing that will help ensure that you don't have to worry about the chicken being undercooked. And it will add additional liquid from just cooking the chicken. That's one thing about cooking chicken thighs, is you're always going to get extra liquid. And as you can see, this is already at a point where the pan is very full. But we're going to get it cooked up nicely. And once that's cooked up, we'll split it into a second wok so that we can do this in 2 separate batches. But we'll be adding the vegetables once the chicken has had a chance to cook through. And really, I don't have an actual time frame that it takes. I want to say roughly about 20 minutes after it gets up to a boil. But really, it's going to depend on how much chicken you're doing. If you're doing 2 pounds, it'll be less time. Since I'm doing 4 pounds, it might take a little bit longer. But either way, it'll be pretty clear. You'll be able to tell when you see that the chicken is no longer pink. It's just like anything else, you know, right now the chicken is very pink. So it's going to be a little while before it's done, but we'll bring that up to a boil and then let it simmer on medium heat. Alright, so while we are waiting for the curry to cook up enough to start before we add the veggies, we're going to get some rice going. So you can use pretty much any kind of rice you prefer, but personally I always use jasmine rice for the green curry. Like I said, you can use whatever kind you want. Because I'm making a big batch of curry, I'm making a big batch of rice as well. So the rule of thumb when it comes to making rice, unless you're doing minute rice, is that you want 1.5 cups of water for every 1 cup of rice. So since I have 3 cups of rice, I'll have 4.5 cups of water. Add 4 cups, 4.5 cups, measured out previously. Bit. Then we'll put the lid on, put it up to the pressure mode, press the rice button, and it should be done in about 15 to 20 minutes. Alright, so now the chicken is well cooked. If you look at this, it's nice and lightly browned. And so now we're going to start adding veggies, and I've already split it up into 2 pans, so it's easier to do that. Drained one of the cans of bamboo shoots to add to the one, and then the same for the other. There's a couple if I don't drop the lid in there. And then we're going to go ahead and split up the vegetables. One thing I do want to note, because I didn't actually give you the measurements on the amount of carrots and of the peas, I did about 1 cup of peas for this entire batch, and then the carrots I just did that whole package. So you can kind of guesstimate on what you want to do. The reality is it doesn't matter too much. If you want more veggies, give yourself more veggies. If you want less, go with less. No matter what you do, it's going to be good. So we want to get this well incorporated, all mixed together nicely. Now you can see the reason why I split it up, because just this one thing, and this is only half of it, is already quite full. And basically at this point, the goal that we have is just to get it cooked to the point where the vegetables are a little bit soft. So the amount of time that that'll take will vary depending on where you're at with everything. But in the end, it's going to be incredibly delicious. Alright, so it's been about 15 minutes since I started cooking the vegetables, and they all look really good. They have a nice softness to them while also still being a bit crunchy. And so we're going to go ahead and as soon as the rice, we turn the heat down to low, and as soon as the rice is complete, then we will put it all together and plate it up.
One of my favorite dishes that he makes. And I do not usually like zucchini or squash, but it's so good in this dish. And the Thai basil, that makes it. It's so good.
So look at this. We got all these great things in here. The chicken, the zucchini, the squash, the peas, the bell peppers, the carrots, Thai basil, and of course this beautiful jasmine rice. Let's get a bite of it all together. Try to get a little bit of that sauce in there too. I went ahead and added some Thai chilies because I wanted a little extra heat. Let's see if we still get chicken. Ooh, I got one of those chilies in there, but that flavor is just magnificent. I'm not good at describing it, but I'm telling you, this stuff is worth making, and if you like Thai food, especially if you like green curry, you gotta make this recipe. Thank you for watching. See you next time. You want 1.5 cups of water for every 1 cup of rice. I have 3 cups of rice, so I'll have 5 cups of water. Is that right?